Thank you. So I guess all you just had lunch. So I'm not very good at jokes, this is my 10-minute joke. Thanks for coming. And as Jen said, this is baby steps in our foray into learning analytics. Okay, I think I've introduced. I'm a research scientist here at CRPP down in Block 5. So this is I would say the next phase of the study that I'm looking at, which is looking at teamwork. Okay, so I would like to start with thanking a lot of people, because this would not be possible without my colleagues such as Jennifer and Helen, and many of my team are here from Shibani, Mia, Laoshan, Iwan. And also I have school collaborators involved in this, and also our MOE ETV collaborator in this project that I'll be sharing about. Okay, so what I'll be looking at, it will be basically certain view of learning analytics, and then giving you some background about the project that I'm looking at, which is called My Group Work Buddy, and then going to what are teamwork competencies and some of the possibilities that I've done, and then some of the paradoxes I've encountered and possible certain pathways ahead. Okay, so I know now also Jen and I have swapped. So Jen will share with you later, and I'll be sharing first. We are two different projects. Okay, but we are similar in that we're both looking at 21st century competencies, and I'm looking firmly more on teamwork. So back to this on learning analytics, I think you've heard a lot about learning analytics today from all the 4 distinguished speakers earlier. And I just want to add one more definition to your list of definitions. Ferguson and Malcolm June have defined these 5 types of analytics that are relevant in this social age, and they also have termed this social learning analytics. So they talked about these 5, which I'll go through briefly for some of them. The first 2 are inherently social. They are talking about being social, data that's in a social network, for instance. The other 3 are applied in social settings. Okay, I'll give you an explanation of that. I didn't realize that this is from one of Dawson's work, Shane's work in your Snap. Okay, so this is an example of social network analytics. I'll not talk too much, but basically it looks at the ties, relations, roles, and developments in the network. Displays connections between participants. So these are examples of how, and a certain way of applying analytics in education. Okay, I want to talk a bit more about discourse analytics. Okay, this is, I think Caroline Rose has talked a lot about this earlier. And basically it is a way of analyzing large amounts of generated text. So this could be in a blog or online chat. It could be on Twitter, it could be just basically discussion from any way of looking at online text. And Compass Linguistics is one such method that employs computer tools to quantitatively investigate vast power of text. So this is another type of another type of text that you can examine in learning analytics. Okay, the third type is content analytics. Okay, this is slightly different from content analysis. This is about it uses various automated methods to examine, index, and filter online media assets for learners. So it helps to customize types of content for the learner. Okay, so like say you go to a Coursera website, it actually tries to recommend certain courses for you based on the interest or even the clicks that you click previously, what kind of courses you're interested in. Okay, the 4th type is something I would like to focus a bit more on. It's called disposition analytics. Okay, disposition analytics. Okay, this is it started from actually Deacon Crick's work on this 7-dimensional model of learning dispositions. It's to do with learning power. She calls this learning power. But from there, she actually worked with Malcolm June and Ferguson, and they have developed what is known as this thing called disposition analytics, which makes visible the complex mixture of experience, motivation, and intelligences of an individual. And it employs visual analytics to reflect back to the learner about their own self-perceived dispositions. And then it also provides this basis for mentor discussion to spark and trigger changes in the learner's activities and approaches to learning. So this is one of the big bases of my work. And I give you one example that they have mentioned in the paper, which is this learning dispositions, the ELLI, Effective Lifelong Learning Inventory. So they have come up with this learning dispositions of these, I believe it's 8 or 9 dimensions, and they actually reflect this back to the learner. And when they do this, this actually helps to focus the learner's attention on the relationships and interdependence of these different dimensions. And it helps the learner in terms of how they can reflect and perceive and process these interactions. And also helps them in the discussion, because it helps to facilitate peer mentoring. It gives them a language for them to actually discuss. So in simple language, which is how I interpret this, it's actually a survey plus a visualization. Yeah, simple language. Okay. So this is one of the key things that I'm looking at in my work. And I just want to end off with, because they talk about Ferguson and Buckingham-Shum, they talked about 5 social learning analytics. This is the 5th one, context analytics. Okay, so this is actually, it pulls together various analytical tools to understand, to expose and make sense of context in relation to learning. Okay, so this can be standalone or integrative. Okay, so one example that they gave was this app called Social Learn that actually allows the learner to search, basically type in keywords, and then resources will be made available to them, and then they can get access to them. And so based on their location, they can these resources will also be customized to their location. So this is one example of context analytics. Okay, so this gives you some background on different types of analytics, but I would like to share with you my focus now, which is my project called My Group Work Buddy. Okay, this is part of an EduLab grant, and it's an intervention project on teamwork. This is the full title. It integrates the integration of My Group Work Buddy into the classroom to enhance student-team collaboration and teacher pedagogical practice. Okay, so this is actually the next phase of my first exploratory study, which focused on building the awareness of students' teamwork. Okay, just awareness. So this next phase actually tries to not only help them be aware, but to actually grow their teamwork competencies. And also there's this aspect of the teacher to help the teacher in their professional development, or how they can guide students in collaborative inquiry tasks. Okay, so what I have done so far is mostly disposition or dispositional analytics, and I have started to try to get my hands into discourse analytics. Okay, but I'll just show you a very short sample of what I've done. Okay, so this development is using a design-based research approach. I think we heard earlier from Prof. Ree and also some of the earlier speakers. They talk about how it's iterative and how it's really helps to focus on the context of where this tool is used. So one of my aims when you're doing design-based research was that it enables a very tight integration of the tool with the school's existing curriculum, the school's existing setup. In this case, we're looking at schools that have a curriculum subject with a project component, a very relatively long, I would say 6 months, which is 2 terms or 1 semester, or 1 year, okay, for 13 to 14-year-olds, which is Set 1, Set 2 students, Secondary 1 and Secondary 2 students in Singapore. Okay, so these are the project goals to help students learn about their personal teamwork competency and to support teachers in their professional development of teaching and facilitating teamwork. At the end of the day, we would like to come up with a lesson package that incorporates this tool, My Group Work Buddy, and also the principles involved in it, as well as the system. Okay, so I've talked a lot about teamwork, but I think there are different definitions out there, and why is it important? Because it's not I would say it's not like your maths or science grades, right? It's not like English grade. This is actually a competency, 21st century competency. And in this day and age, educators and organizations, they have recognized the importance of 21st century learning skills that are necessary for learners to thrive in this fast-paced, globalized, knowledge-based economy. Okay, so collaboration is one key competency that many of the different, say, 21CC frameworks from different organizations and they all talk about. And it's very pertinent for both the workplace as well as in school. Okay, so I have, in my studies, I have termed this teamwork competency, and it's multidimensional. Just a note, I focus more on teamwork, even though there's a lot of linkages to collaboration. Because for collaboration, it could include mass collaboration. It does not include denote the size of the group. But for teamwork, it's usually a small group. So in a team, an individual in a team should have the capability to work in a team. Okay, so in other words, teamwork is the process of actually working in an interdependent team. Okay, so there are many ways of looking at teamwork, many ways of defining and understanding it. So for the purpose of our study, also based on literature and also pilot tests, we have actually first developed 6 dimensions of teamwork, and now we have refined it to 4 key dimensions, which I'll explain soon. So the first 3 are more to do with the cognition, I would say, more to do with the cognitive elements, and the last one, team emotional support, is to do with the social emotional element. Okay, so coordination is the ability to organize team activities to complete a task on time. Okay, so this includes like exchanging information of one's progress and how the person has been doing in this task. It could also be to do with things like design roles. Okay, next is mutual performance monitoring. Okay, so this was actually something that was very relevant for our student teams because there's this problem of free riders, right? People who slack and don't want to do anything and just let other people do. So mutual performance monitoring is actually the aspect that actually helps students to track the performance of their team members, to actually give feedback to the team member if he or she is not not like putting his or her weight. Okay, so you identify the lack of contributions and you review the team members' work. The third one is constructive conflict. Actually, this dimension came about through pilot tests also, because you realize that you realize was quite a very important dimension in teamwork, because we had certain teams that were very quick to agree. They were very quick to agree. So even though they disagree in their heart, but they were quick to verbally say, okay, we'll go with this answer. So especially what we realized that there was this inability for students to actually deal with differences in the team. So they were just very happy to just say, okay, I agree, let's go on. Yeah. So we found that this was an important dimension of teamwork to be able to help students to share their different opinions. They may have slightly different opinions, and to help them to elaborate on why they interpret it differently or why they have a disagreement through discussion and clarification. So this is also to do with weighing pros and cons. And the last one, which we focus on in our teamwork competency, is team emotional support. We found this is commonly known also as psychological support, right? In a team, or you must feel comfortable with each other. You must feel bonded to each other. This is about showing care for them and valuing your team members. So these are the 4 teamwork competency dimensions that I'm looking at, and we have we're using that in the current project. But to use this in the project, these are just, in a sense, your formative assessment. These are the things that you're looking out for. But how are you going to help students nurture them? How do you help students to learn these competencies? So in each school that I'm intervening with, there are actually existing pedagogical approaches based on the different subjects. Okay, so but notwithstanding whichever pedagogy, there's this complementary approach that I have introduced, which my team and I have developed, called the Team and Self-Diagnostic Learning Framework, or TSDL for short. It is based on experiential learning by Cole, it's based on collaborative learning, and also the learning analytics process model. So in brief, this is the diagram. Okay, it starts off with team-based concrete experience, we get students to actually participate in the teamwork to get experience in an activity that has a final deliverable, some kind of deliverable. And then we get students to actually, I'll be sharing more steps later, but basically there's a sense of getting students to gain awareness of what they have did through the analytics. So the analytics serves as the reflection, a metacognitive tool for them to actually reflect on their behaviors. And then teams will reflect and make sense of this instance, this dashboard, which I'll show later. And this will prompt, the aim is to prompt self and team growth and change. So these are sort of the possibilities, okay, because the title of my presentation is the possibilities, paradoxes, and pathways. So these were the possibilities that my team and I were able to do. Okay, so these are the possibilities. Okay, this is the same thing but in a sequential manner. This is what we did. We got them to collaborate, got them to make sense through disposition analytics, basically a survey of teamwork competencies, and then we visualize it to them to help them gain awareness of their personal strengths and weaknesses. And this is followed by self and then team reflection. And also this idea of future-oriented reflection for improving their teamwork. And then this we hope will stimulate them to grow and change. And we'll hope to repeat this cycle. So what I'm showing you are some pictures from our second iteration, which is just this year. So this was then my team of developers and research assistants. Okay, so we have, this is how my group work buddy looks like. Basically this is a course page. We have some lessons that the teacher can put in. And then on the right here is a chat, a team chat. Okay? And here is where actually we put a link to different things, resources for the students. Okay, it's a very simple lesson page, and we integrate it into the curriculum. So for this particular school that we did, it was part of our design and technology course, and they do some collaborative research. So they actually they did some collaborative research. So there were some guidelines for the research, and they had to give a short report. Okay, and then they were encouraged to use this online chat. Because through this chat, the teacher can broadcast messages also to the students. Okay, so after this experience of teamwork, we actually got students to the next phase of that, which is the awareness building. See, so we were only able to provide visual analytics based on disposition analytics, which is the self. We did both self and peer ratings. And we called this, after they did this, we called this this visual analytic micro profile, rather than like a learning profile. Because when we talk about micro profile, it makes it clearer that it's a micro, it's just based on this particular instance. Yeah, so based on the micro time context. Okay, and micro profiles are created from the rating scale, from Likert scale 1 to 5, where 5 indicates strongly agree. So there was a personal micro profile and a team one, which is for all the students in that team. So I'll show you some pictures. Okay, so this was the self-rating. It was done online, so it's a simple survey. And then there's a team rating where they will actually rate their peers on the same 4 dimensions. Okay. And after that, okay, this is a picture of the school and class. So this was done in class. So they would rate us on the peers. And then we showed them this personal teamwork micro profile. So it uses a radar chart. We showed, and you could see their self, how they rated themselves and how their peers rated them. And this peer rating was averaged from all the peers in the team. So there were usually 3 to 4 people, 3 to 4 members in the team. Yeah, so this peers is a peer average, and they could see this. And these are some of the actual numbers that they. There was the actual, basically 1 to 5 was 5 was the highest for the 4 dimensions. Okay, and we have also similarity score, which I'll talk about. Similarity score is basically the difference between the self and their peers. Okay, which I'll not go into now. Okay, so this is the personal micro profile. And then we also showed them, before they went to the team microprofile, they actually did a reflection. I'll put that slide later on. But just let me show you the version 2 of our team microprofile. So we're not completely happy with this yet. So this is the team microprofile where these are 4 students in the team. And we actually showed them basically how each person, this is based on peer ratings, how the students rated each other based on the peers on these 4 dimensions. Okay, so, and then the thing about goal setting, which is part of the reflection part, we actually also got students to set their goals for future improvement of the team activity. Okay, so these were how it was done in class. It was in the computer lab. Okay, and then they reflected on the personal microprofile, followed by the team reflections. So the teacher had to do some facilitation, had to go and, some students were not actually doing, we had issues like students not bothering to reflect. Actually, they found the reflection challenging. Yeah, they didn't know what to write, or they would just write like 1 word or few words, sentences. Yeah, so basically we had to encourage students and prompt students to reflect this verbally at this stage. Okay, so for that, we had a reflection space, which is just below the microprofiles. So we asked them things about how they felt about the ratings, whether they saw any difference between the self and peer ratings, whether they agree or not. That's for the personal one. And for the team reflections, we asked them to come together as a team and then discuss how they have performed as a team and suggest ways of how they can improve. Yeah, so this is, I would say, the implementation part of how we have implemented disposition analytics and reflected it to the students. We are in the process of trying to do discourse analytics. We have come up with some sample coding schemes based on the 4 dimensions. But as you can see, the students hardly use the chat. So that's also one of the issues, because when they don't use the chat, we don't have any data to analyze. Yeah. So this is a work in progress on our possible discourse analytics. So this brings about, I just highlighted some of the paradoxes. Okay, first is to do with using this disposition analytics, which is what Dragon has actually mentioned. What sort of visualizations are most meaningful for the students? So we are still trying to figure out which one, because we have had feedback for the peer, for the self ratings. When students see their self and their peers, the personal microprofile, that's fine. But when it comes to a team, some students are saying that I shouldn't compare myself to other people in the team. I prefer to, not compare, just compare with myself. Yeah, so things like that. We have to decide on which is more meaningful for the student. And the other thing would be reflecting on the visual analytic is not as easy as it seems. Yeah, as I mentioned, students at this age, these students are 14 years old. They actually found responding to why questions actually challenging at this age. And even when we talk to the teachers, and the teachers already told us it's something that they're still learning to develop in the metacognitive sense is still growing. So it's something that they find challenging. Yeah, so actually in the second iteration, we actually gave them a handout of some of the descriptive words about teamwork. And then we had a lot of students looking really, it was useful in the sense of they could have, it expanded their vocabulary, but at the same time there was a bit of copying. Yeah. Okay, so that's some of the paradoxes and challenges. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, for the discourse analytics, right now our data is derived from the team chat, but in authentic tasks where it's face-to-face and formal in K-12 settings, they hardly used it, and there were other and more powerful tools for collaboration. So there were a lot of them were using WhatsApp or even Google Docs and so on, because they're used to it, and these are dominant modes of collaboration. So these are some of the paradoxes we found. So what are the pathways ahead? So this is my last slide. So right now we are trying to revise Migrate Work Buddy, MGB for short, to be more of a formative teamwork competency assessment tool, so that it will be used at the key points of the whole project to trigger students to reflect about their own teamwork at key junctures. And this will be tied to their larger inquiry-based collaboration tasks. And also in terms of reflection activity, we are going to focus students, this will be our next iteration, which is next term. We're going to focus students on a particular dimension and scaffold them with questions, or simpler questions. And also for the online team chat, we're still thinking, but we would like to be deliberate as well as meaningful, use the team chat in a very meaningful way through a pedagogical activity. Yeah, so that we can build in all this, discuss analytics for visualizations. So these are some of our possible pathways ahead. And of course, the learning community here, it's always great to be in conversation with you, with our collaborators. Yeah, because it's a work, learning analytics, as what I think Dragon was mentioning during the break, only 5 years old plus, right? So it's something that's still, we're still developing and seeing where, how it can be better for our students. At the end of the day, it's all about learning. Okay, so these are some of the selected references, and any questions?
I have a question on the profiles and the survey and the profile. Okay. Basically, my understanding is that the kind of micro profiles that can be generated is in part contingent to when and under which conditions the surveys were administered. So far for the current iteration, there's once or twice, right? 1 or 2 points in time that the profiles are generated. So my question is that I think this is more of a kind of a cross-sectional kind of collection of data, and we are basically aware of implications when you try to generate a profile based on cross-sectional data rather than longitudinal data. And at the end, you also mentioned that the way forward is to look at kind of formative assessments where you take multiple points, right? Take data from multiple points. So my related question is there a value in having a composite profile that is generated from multiple personal profiles across time and kind of put together to look at, these dispositions, how the dispositions kind of evolve over time?
Yeah, great question, as my collaborator. So yes. So I think for this particular project and school that we're working on, I think we have decided on 3 iterations. So actually at the end of the day, we can actually show them that composite of those 3. Yes. I think it is possible, but I think when we do that, we have to decide what would be the purpose and how would we help, how would that help them in their own teamwork behaviors. Yeah, and I mean this could be a marker of, in a sense, sort of time, at the end in the sense they're Sec 2, at the end of Sec 2, this is where they are at. So this could be in a sense some kind of gauge for them, yeah, so it's possible for that composite kind of measure. But I think the earlier question was on basically looking at the transitions between the different activities, different time points, right? I think that's the question. So actually in the group development literature, there's this idea of the idea of forming, storming, and norming, and performing. This idea of like when your groups first start, then after that they storm, so there's a drop in group performance. But after that when they norm, they get better. So that's actually what we're hoping to see in our teams, that there's this, and actually we have some evidence of that, but not totally yet, but we hope to see that kind of trajectory of it improving, yeah. So the different time points can actually show that, yeah. Yeah, Scarlett.
So you did talk about different phases of the work that you're doing, and one of them was where students actually do sort of this forward reflection, where I understand that they're trying to think about how they can improve in their collaboration. But what I'd like to hear more about is how how the assessment that you reflect to them in terms of the 4 dimensions that you tell them about, how do they know if they're low? What does that mean? And what they can do about it? So do they have good role models that they can compare their style to? You know, you have this coding scheme, but do they actually get to see those definitions? You know, so I guess I'm just wondering, how do the students know what good collaboration should look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's something we're also thinking about, because we are, in Singapore there's this famous, like, we always have 10-year series, you have these like, model answers, and then when we give students that becomes the model, and what happens is there's a lot of pattern recognition, there's a lot of that. So we are also trying to figure out the best model, but I was reading one of Ramal's work, which is to do with a model of collaboration, where they actually gave students the best. They compared and contrasted a situation where they let students just collaborate without a model, and one where they actually gave students the best practice model, and then asked students to collaborate based on that. Actually, that study actually found that because the best practice model, it's a sort of like, it's just based on that particular condition or that particular context, and so it may not transfer in other contexts. So actually, right now, in terms of the pedagogy that I'm looking at a bit more of experiential learning, where students actually experience it first and then reflect on their own experience to draw out what are the things that are important to them. Yeah, so I'm going more from that perspective. Yeah, but I agree with some of the challenges, because when there's no model of collaboration, students don't know how to behave in that sense. Yeah, so that's something that we're still discussing and seeing how much scaffolding we actually need to give students. Yeah.